Welcome, aviators, pilots, instructors, friends. Welcome to the GA Season Opener 2023 session. This session is on flight instructors, and I'm really glad that you could all make it because, yeah, you're spending some precious time with us today. I'm Wendell Lynch. I'm very excited to be your host today. I work at EASA. I'm a safety promotion officer. And as a pilot and a new flight instructor, I'm very passionate about aviation and about safe flying and everything about, flying, safety, aviation, everything. And I'm really on a personal mission to make flying safe and improve safety in general aviation as well. But I cannot do it alone. I mean, that's why I'm here with you, the audience, and also with our panel, because yeah, I'm trying to look for answers, possibilities, ways, and thinking creatively of how we can make flying safer for everyone. So we started this series last year already at the GA Season Opener with my colleague Thomas Hitten from the Norwegian CEA. He was interviewing a flight instructor. But I think there's still a lot of things to do, right? And so there's a lot of things we will need to explore. And this is why I'm continuing the series with new guests. And we will focus, again, our attention on flight instructors this year. What we will do in this webinar for you to know, we will look at the role and responsibility of flight instructors and examiners as gatekeepers, I think, in my mind, to safety in general aviation. Also, let's really look eye to eye, right, and identify the risk. What's going on in our day-to-day practice as flight instructors? What do we see, and how can we, what kind of risk are pilots exposed to, and what can we do to mitigate these risks? Also, let's talk about with the panel about maybe there's a difference between flight instructors in an ATO and in a DTO. Let's see and explore that. That might be interesting to have a discussion about. And then also let's see about all the regulations. What are the regulations with regards to flight instructing, with regards to training? What are the new developments and changes upcoming? And these are kind of the topics that I would like to explore with the panel. You can be part of the discussion. You can ask questions in Slido. You know a little bit what's going on there. Basically, what we will also do now and try is that you can, we will ask the polls questions. So during the interaction, you can see if you have another, your iPhone next to your laptop, or even if you can, I think, see the Slido in the bottom right of the corner. You can switch between the questions and the polls. So pay attention to that. John Franklin will be at the controls today. He will launch the polls, and then he will also provide us with some feedback, so we can integrate, the answers you give to us, and integrate that also in the discussion. And maybe John can launch the first poll question. It's running, and then maybe you can see and give us some feedback on what's going on. Just so check it out and see. So our panel of flight instructors and experts, they bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion to this discussion. Of course, that's our panel. I will introduce you very quickly. Of course, we have a little disclaimer we have to do before that. All that we're going to discuss here, even if it's like on the internet, it's our opinion. Our opinion sorry for this, our opinion, our expertise, and our knowledge with regards to flight instructions and safety promotion in general. So before we go, I'd like to show you. All right, so that was a little bit of intermezzo. Let me quickly introduce the panel to you. We have Andreas Winkler on screen from Austria. He is CPL, PPL, SPL. He started flying in 1979. I think I was barely born in 79. But you do a lot of PPL and SPL training. I think you do also a lot of flight testing, and you build airplanes, or you have built airplanes. So that is very interesting. We maybe get to that during our discussion as well. And we also have Toby. Toby is Lehmann, German nationality. You are an ATPL. You have flown the 737. I think you were a captain even on the 737. At this moment, you are running an ATO in Mönchengladbach, and have a lot of students. You're SAP, MAP, type rating instructor for the 737. Lots of good stuff. And I think what is very interesting also, we have to watch Toby, because if he leaves the show, he might have an emergency, because Toby is also part of fire brigade in the staff. So if he changes his clothes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Toby running for the rescue. We also have Prokopis. Prokopis is sitting next to me here. He's from EASA. He's also an ATPL. The interesting thing, ATPL type rating instructor. You got everything there is to get, I think, Prokopis. And the interesting bit of Prokopis, he has airplane and helicopter licenses, and also, of course, a flight instructor. Next to flying, he's teaching. He likes teaching, skiing, and some woodwork also. And he used to be, that's what he told me, he used to be a professional photographer. So that's very interesting, Prokopis. We have also Christian Kucher. He's also worked for EASA as a rulemaking officer in the FCL field. And I'm very happy that he can be here as well. Even if he does rulemaking, he is a pilot. He has a PPL. He has also his night rating. He's been flying. We actually flew sometime. It's been a while, but we have to do that again, Christian. And one of his passions is really to make flight instructor certificates more accessible to us. So that's good. So ask him questions, ladies and gentlemen. And next to flying and aviation, he loves to play with his daughter, 1-year-old. So congratulations, Christian. That's great to know. Okay, so gentlemen, thank you for being here. Welcome here. The interesting bit that you all said as flight instructors, that when I asked you what is the most memorable thing that experience, what you went through as flight instructor, you all said solo. People, your first student going solo. Can you say something about that, Toby? How was that?
Yeah, there's the first solo I was observing was as a flight instructor. registered privileges. In those time, I had a JAR FCL license because it was back in 2005, and already then we had the requirement for the CPL knowledge. So yeah, I just finished my ATP training. It was quite new. So for me, it was a bit the same story like for all the Americans who after flight school become a flight instructor, where it is more natural to become that one. And of course, you're most excited because you just did the check, and you're flying in your mind. You're joining your student, even if you're not seated next to him.
So how were you like, you know, how jittery could you be, Andreas? I mean, this is I mean, if it was up to me, I would not leave. You know, I would not let people go solo, right?
No, I think it's the most memorable, let's say, flight in each pilot's career. So this is really a big event for any pilot, yeah. And so I think it's also a very important thing for each flight instructor. And for me, it's always one of the moments, yeah, where I get some loving mind in the faces of a student pilot to do his first solo. So this is always a really memorable event you have, yeah. So, but it's important as a flight instructor to do that, yeah. It's and you're responsible for the student. This is really, I think, one of the responsibilities you have as a flight instructor. You are on ground and you give them the passion to go solo. It's really a big event for me.
Prokopis, did you ever regret sending a student solo?
That's a short story that was back in 1989, I think. Was in Marathon Airport, that now the airport does not exist because they became the card for the rowing for the Olympic Games. So the runway now it's for the rowing. It was an older instructor. I was a new instructor in gliders. That happened in gliders, and there was an older instructor and told me, in case that this guy, the psychist, let's say, you know, is ready to be solo, because I was head of the camp. Just do a couple of flights and send him solo. He's quite okay, but you have the final word on that. And actually, I flew with a guy, and he was quite okay, but he was this type of the Top Gun style with the flight jacket and the patches, and he was, let's say, the type of student that he could very easily get out of the lines. So when I sent him solo, to be honest, you know, was really my heart attack was let's say 200 beats per minute, because with a glider it's you know, there's no margin for failure. And to be honest, I understood how important was that after I sent him solo. You know, when I went to bed and the next days, and but that triggered my mind, you know, to think more complex about that. It's not an easy thing. It's not you have to do with humans. Humans are different, and you have to let's say treat each one individually without having let's say very rough lines. Yeah, that was my first experience, in very quick.
All right. Christian, you remember your first solo?
I remember my first solo, but even more, I remember my first solo cross country.
Yeah.
Because what happened, we prepared the flight, and I took off, but after a few minutes, unexpectedly, the weather became much worse. Clouds were coming closer and lower and so on, and it took me some time, but then finally I want to complete the flight. I want to do it. I pushed myself, but then I said, okay, no, this is too much. I turned back and landed back at the airport, and when taxiing back, I thought to myself, my instructor will be mad on me, because, you know, you missed the opportunity, you missed the day, we have to go for another, we have to wait now again. But he was super cool and like, oh no, well done, well decision making, you did everything right. And that was with a kind of a nice nice move from our instructor, which I will never forget. So yeah, that's my memory for the first solo cross country.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's immediately a first and good lesson to learn, right? So did you launch the poll, John? Did you have some results?
So we're on poll number 4 now. Do you want me to show you some of the
just
results
show us
for the different ones?
Some results that might be interesting to see.
Let's
What is
see.
our audience?
I'd say I'm particularly impressed with the country bit. So I'll just quickly put this on the screen here. So we have oh yeah. So actually you can't see this, but we have Austria by far the biggest. And then
welcome Austria.
Austria, 12 points.
The bit I'm particularly impressed is we actually have somebody joining us from Luanda in Angola.
Oh wow!
Which
that's great.
Pretty impressive. We have Germany, Norway, Sweden, Belgium, Vienna, Ireland, Denmark, Greece, Croatia, Hungary, France, Switzerland. Actually, it was interesting because when we had the session last week, we had an awful lot of people. We have a huge contingent of people from Hungary. So it's interesting that we've got less people, or they didn't like to own up today that they were all from Hungary. So we see. And then Bergamo, obviously in Italy, Switzerland. So that was kind of interesting. If we go to the second poll, what kind of license people have? So we have obviously majority with PPL. We have CPLs as well. SPL, UL.
Okay, so that's
good selection.
It's a little bit good to know our audience, right?
And then the question: are you currently? This is the one we still have running. Are you currently a licensed flight instructor? So 88% of people said they were a flight instructor, and 12 not yet. And then interesting that very much a flight instructor audience we have here tonight.
All right, so that's cool.
So that's where we are. And I've just launched the poll on for people to share their own experiences, so we can come back to that in a minute.
All right, so thank you for that, for this intermediate result. We will get back to John more often. So guys, let's go to the nitty-bitty of it, right? So when we talk, and I will share a little bit the, where am I? Here. There we go. So, as you know, EASA is publishing a general aviation safety statistics in the annual safety review. We've been doing this a couple of years now, and basically over the years, we see this annual safety review, these records. To be honest, it gives us a headache, right? We keep seeing basically the same things over and over again. So with regards to the phase of flight, when you go into, you can go to the website and have the annual safety review and check it out for yourself. We're not seeing anything new. The takeoff, landing bit is basically giving us the most accidents and incidents, serious accidents and accidents and serious incidents. When we look at the operations, as you can also find in this annual review, what you see, there's a lot of pleasure flights going on where we find accidents and serious incidents. But interestingly, these accidents and incidents happen during flight training, instructional training. There's an instructor on board. So this is, for me, that stands out. So why is that, guys? Why is it that this is going on? And why are with all the regulations in place, with all the requirements, the check rides, us doing a lot of, some effort in training people, examining people, the role of EASA, the role of NEAs, what is going on? Are we doing something wrong? Is there a system failure? Or what is it? Can you shed a light on that? Do you have an idea, Prokopis? What are we doing wrong?
It's a lot of things. It's not only just one thing. the first thing that I just mentioned is that the students are humans. We should treat each one individually. There's no, let's say, a great recipe. There is a good recipe, but not a great recipe. So we have to treat people individually, and most of the time approaching them on the way that we can easily understand what they think, what they have in their mind. The humans are very complex machines. It's not something that we can all the time understand with the first view what they have in their mind. People are coming in aviation for different reasons. It's not the same for everyone. Some people are coming because they love to fly, and this is for me the best. Some other people are coming to become professionals. Some other come to do show off. Some others are coming to satisfy their personal needs, and it's the role of the instructor to understand that, because nobody else is so close to that person in order to feel and discuss and understand what he feels. And that's why I personally done all my life while I was instructing. Right now instructing more than 35 years, is that I like to spend time with my students, even after the flight, after the airport, and I'm mostly friend with most of my students. And this I can discover a lot of their personal lives and their personal beliefs, their personal, let's say, thoughts. So for me, it's easier, when we're going in the airplane, to understand what is the way, what is the best recipe for them, and this is my technique.
Mhm. Mhm. Toby, what is your idea about this? Why do we keep seeing, the same, no change in the statistics in that sense, while we're doing a good job according to Prokopis?
Yeah, I guess there are two different the possibilities. First one is that people always come across approaching an instructor, as you guys already have been saying. People, or as an instructor, I have often a personal connection still ongoing to my former students, and when they come to, let's say, for revalidation of a single engine piston class rating, there is this requirement for this 1 hour training flight with the instructor. So you ask those guys what you like to train. There is no requirements listed in part FCL what needs to be done. And so let's say, or I would like to phrase it like you're going the extra mile. You're going somewhere where they have never gone within the last 2 years. So you're doing stalls, maybe you're doing a little bit of basic UPRT training, or you're flying under the hood. So this brings people, and as well instructors, maybe into an area where they are not fully proficient. And the next thing is that most common, I see it as an examiner, that private pilots, especially private pilots with an IR rating, we have the possibility to do the IR check in a simulator, and then they just come across 2-3 weeks in advance of their rating is expiring and saying, I need to do a check ride in the sim. So it's, from the voice and from the tone they say it sounds like it's an easy ride, but it's not easy for those guys, because they never get trained, or they stopped training. So the peak and the best performance they have is when they leave, let's say, the school or the club, and then they pass their check ride, even if it's for the PPL or for the IFR rating. And then the flying rate and the hours they gain is going down and down and down. And so they come, and then they are not fully familiar. So, and there are circumstances, maybe as an instructor, where you cannot react anymore properly to recover the situation.
Andreas, is it what Toby says? Is it the fault of the pilot? Is it really their, lack of commitment, what we would like to see, the continuous training, the continuous commitment, is that what it is in your?
I guess, yeah, if I'm allowed to add, I guess it's always a combination. It's not always, it's not the pilot fault. We're not pointing with a finger to the pilots. It's just a combination of fuel is getting more and more expensive, especially during the last year. So flying hours is getting expensive. Simulators hours are still the same rate, let's say, but the problem is that the people as well, as that's why I said it's a combination, and the people need to have the attitude to say, okay, I need to train this. And in the simulator, it is quite easy. In an airplane, maybe during flight training for the revalidation of a single engine piston class rating with an instructor, you try something out which you are not fully proficient of.
Andreas?
I think for me, it's a little bit statistics that we have here. Yeah, in flight training, basic training, we're flying a lot landings and takeoffs. So we do a lot of that. So it's very much normal that we may have a kind of accident or occurrence during takeoff and landing, just even in flight training. So that's a little bit a statistic thing. But what is the root cause? Yeah. If I'm looking back in my flight instruction, it already happened to me. So I was not perfect. Yeah, I remember very much that I did a tail dragger training with a student. Yeah, and it was really, let's say, not an easy to handle tail dragger airplane. Yeah, and it's flying tail draggers is something which is it's not easy. And the most important thing for me, for a flight instructor, to let the student fly. Yeah, and during landing, yeah, you must let them fly. Yeah, you cannot fly it yourself. It will never be successful. So there's always a boundary where you should quickly do something or not. And it happened to me. I was simply not quickly enough, and we got a very small strike with the prop. Yeah, it just happened in a very, very small area of time. I was simply not quick enough to that. Yeah, and I think that it is what be alerting me. Yeah, that we should be always have that in mind, that it can happen so quickly. Yeah, and I think that is maybe the root cause, that our mind as a flight instructor should be really, really open as we can, yeah, for all circumstances that can happen, yeah. But on the other end, we should let the student fly, yeah. Otherwise, he will never learn to handle the airplane in a sufficient and effective way. So this balance, I think, is it where we are in a daily life as a flight instructor, and this is the right balance we have to find. And it's a kind of, let's say, experience on flight hours in flight training that we need. So for me, it's practicing flight instruction is the important thing that we have to do as a flight instructor.
Yeah, because what I hear a little bit also is that there's multiple things here. Is that indeed I agree with you. Is like, if we are training, we spend a lot of time near the ground, right? We do a lot of circuit training. I mean, and this is where accidents happen, and near the ground, when we don't have time to react, right? And flight instruction is almost all, well, most of the time near the ground. So this is a risk area in that sense. I also agree with Toby, is that in that sense, when we are under the feathers of our flight instructor, we are pretty, also what you say is we're pretty committed to our student. We take care of the student. We train them well. They are at the peak of their abilities in that sense, when they go for the check ride, when they just got their license. But then afterwards, right? So what happened there? And then where is the flight instructor in that sense? So that might be also an interesting thing to think about. Where are we when people are there? Are we really leaving it all the way up to the pilot himself? So that is kind of interesting. Christian, just to put you on the spot, is like, is the system failing us? You know, even if we try, you know, with the regulations, with the flight instructor, is that, you know, even with all the effort we do, you know, we really put it. I believe we really have to have the regulation. I believe we have the flight instructors. They do a good job. Why don't we see that back in the accident statistics? Why isn't that system how it is, how it has been for so many years, producing good, solid accident statistics for us to say like, well, you know, we're doing a good job?
In general, I would not necessarily say that we do a bad job, because we don't know how the situation would be if we didn't have the rules, and maybe it would be worse.
Yeah.
But of course, I agree, there's always room for improvement, and there are several things we're working on at the moment. One of it, and I want to come back to what Toby mentioned before, and one, let's say, weak point in the regulation up to now is this revalidation training flight of the single engine business class rating, where the regulation indeed today says if you revalidate by experience, not by a proficiency check, it's some amount of flying within the validity period of the rating, plus 1 hour of refresher training flight with an instructor. The regulation does not say that the candidate needs to do a good job during that refresher training. He or she just needs to complete the refresher training. And also the regulation is completely silent as regards what should be the necessary content of such refresher training flight in order to be a meaningful training event for the candidate. This has been discussed already for some time, and what is an upcoming change is with the current rulemaking task, the opinion, so the final draft regulation, which will be published and forwarded to the European Commission for adoption, and we'll see the regulation entering into force, let's say, hopefully first half of next year. There will be a rule change, long story short, where this part of the regulation referring to the this refresher training flight will be updated in two ways. First of all, it the rule text will clearly say that the training flight needs to be completed to the satisfaction of the instructor. So there is it is clear in regulation that you can fail the training flight in a way, right? If you show very, very bad performance. And the second part is that the regulation on a high level will also say that the content of the refresher training flight should be selected by the instructor in such a way that the candidate has the chance to refresh his or her competence to safely operate the aircraft in normal, abnormal, and emergency situations. And there is an AMC, that is acceptable means of compliance, which will also be developed in support of this rule change, that will explain in a bit, or illustrate in a bit more detail, what does it mean, what should be the necessary content. And specifically this AMC will refer to kind of UPRT style exercises, so but nothing new, not reinventing the wheel, but exercises to different stall scenarios, in climb, in cruise flight, in the descending turn, clean, in landing configuration, so different stall events that to address those areas where we know, according to the accident statistics, that the problems are. So this is one upcoming rule change to address. Okay. Another thing, of course, in the long run, but we can discuss this maybe maybe later, is also that in the future we're also switching the instructor training to be more focused on competency-based training and assessment, CPTA, which is the future novel training methodology we're going to implement. But that's another topic.
Okay.
I would like to add here that for someone that he's an active pilot, he's flying the 12 hours. In order to revalidate his license, he's only seeing the instructor every 2 years. So the only point that he meets the system is the flight instructor. That's why the role and the importance of the flight instructor is very very serious. It's not just a flight. Yeah. It's like a small check ride, because the flight instructor is fully responsible for the revalidation of this person's license.
Mm-hmm. But we
he will never meet, let's say, an
Yeah.
examiner or
Yeah.
somebody else if he keeps on revalidating the lights
Yeah.
for the rest of his life.
So the flight instructor, as we know, like you say, we are in that sense the one, even before the regulator, before the authority, we get to see the pilot in that critical phase as well. So do we need that rulemaking change to put it in the rules? Couldn't we, as flight instructor, already have taken that on board, saying that, hey, this is our responsibility, as we see the pilot only 2 years?
Yeah, that's
You know what I mean, Andreas? Is that?
Yeah,
Do we need?
I think it's a good step forward, yeah, because we have to touch these we call it lonely wolves, yeah, the pilots who make their pilot license, and you will never touch the system again, yeah, and as you said before, it's the only the one with the flight instructor and the training flight, so it's a very important step in our continued monitoring of the system, yeah, and I think also it's for the flight instructors, it's a very important role in the system that we have here, and we should take that really with care.
And yeah, because I think it's interesting, because if we come with specific requirements for the biannual check ride, for the stalls, what you're saying, Christian, that means that we as flight instructors will also need to be up to date on that, right? We need to keep ourselves up to date in all those normal and abnormal situations. So will that also automatically be requirements for flight instructors? Do we add something to that, you think? Or do we need to?
So the rulemaking task I was referring to before is specifically now for pilot training, and specifically also for private pilot training or LAPL, BPL holders. We also have another rulemaking task, which is at the moment comprehensively revising Part FCL to Part J, so instructor certificates. And there, of course, it's a major redrafting of this part of FCL. And there are many aspects that we will bring into this task. One of it, as I mentioned before already, is to introduce in steps. It's not from 0 to 100, but in steps, the CPTA methodology, so competency-based training and assessment. But this is not the only thing. When we revise Part FCL to Part J comprehensively, also we'll try to address a number of let's say inconsistencies, unclarities that need to be clarified, and the let's say an improvement of the requirements for flight instructor refresher training, let's say, is one of the things we'll look into. Yeah, so what we did in the pilot refresher training, also when we comprehensively look into revising Part FCL to Part J, this is one area we will also look into. Yeah, how to, in accordance with the CPTA methodology, how to obtain the competence to be a good instructor and how to maintain the competence to be a good instructor.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to go?
Yeah,
Should we have a look at some of the polls here?
Oh, that's interesting.
So I can. I'll go back to the very beginning, actually, or the very beginning, not the very beginning, obviously, but where we were asking people about their most memorable experiences. I think that in itself was quite interesting. I think it matched kind of what the panelists were saying. First solo was the most popular. First cross-country solo. Similar. First solo was the thing. Engine failure, and then we've got kind of lots of other things.
Real engine failure. That might be interesting. Yeah.
Having an engine failure, nearly running out of fuel, first solo in a guider, communications loss. That was kind of interesting one.
As well.
Cross-country flying matches again. Some of the discussion what you were saying, Christian, in your story. But there's obviously one person here, supersonic. Obviously, there's always a show off, isn't there?
No, it's great. I would love to train with you, right?
So lots of cool stuff. 737, A320. Shows the diversity of people we've got here, which is really cool. So that's an interesting one. Then if I go to the next one, what do you think needs to be improved? Yeah, lots of really great stuff here. So people saying, standardization via webinars. The more of these kinds of things. Finding ways to improve judgment amongst pilots. I know we've been talking a lot about decision making, haven't we, Vendel? And really, how can we help pilots understand what are the most important decisions they need to focus their efforts on? And a lot of that was matched in some of the other comments. Better preparation, using apps for flight, Sky Demon. We talked about that quite a bit, actually, about different planning apps last week in the international flying session. Lots of really good stuff. Competence-based training model. I know there's lots of interesting discussions about, do you apply almost like a competency-based approach to GA? I'm sure that'll be a subject that'll run in terms of discussions. Lots of other ones. Teamwork. More open webinars, not just for instructors. And that's one of the things we hope we're going to do, these kind of different webinars at least once a month. And the more of these we do, we learn what kind of topics people want them on. So more of that kind of thing. Vim talks about sharing with the community, and again, more of that continually through our safety promotion activities. And we will have more sessions when the safety review is published. One thing we will specifically do is talk that through and then do more discussions on what we found from that. More symposiums and events at the CEA. And that's actually something we've been doing a lot of now, is trying to get out from our side at EASA to national events. So Vendel, you were in Luxembourg and Switzerland. This weekend, I'm in Finland at the Finnish GA event. Our colleague Vlado, who leads the GA roadmap, he's in Austria at the event that Andreas is having. And then we've got others hopefully later in the year. So more and more of these kinds of things. So lots of great stuff, particularly if we come back if we have a chance on that one. And then maybe the next one in terms of where we focus our efforts. I was particularly interested. I thought people would go more for basic flying skills.
And this is the interesting.
Yeah, I thought you'd like
this. Really the interesting bit, because this is what I was trying to get to. Is like, well, where should we focus our flight training on? Because I feel, and also for me as practice, we are focused on, takeoffs, landings, stalls, steep turns, all those kind of things. We have the syllabus, and people have to get this, be proficient at flying. But what about decision making? What about risk management? What about the softer skills? How do we teach that? And obviously, our audience says we need to have this balance, right? And maybe we have to focus that more. Do you think we're doing that not so well, Toby?
Yeah. Now, when we look at the PPL training, if that is a question, what do? You're flying from A to B during cross-country flight, and then you say to the student, okay, now you have a thunderstorm ahead. What are your actions? And then you're trying to get him something like into a situation which you only can barely simulate. Then he tells you, looking on the chart and saying, okay, I'm going there. So he's diverting to the next suitable airport, and there it already starts. So what is suitable, what is adequate was taught to me during my ETOPS flight training, and there might be huge differences. And to approach this situation is, in my opinion, quite essential to the outcome, because first you need to say, okay, what is my failure and what are my options? And maybe then sit on your fingers and wait for 5 minutes and think that to the end, so that you maybe take a pen and write it down. That already calms the situation down, because writing is not so fast as just acting and turning the stick into the direction of your selected, maybe too quickly selected alternate airport in my example now. So this is what is not taught, in my opinion, correctly or not correctly, but maybe too little. First, because it's in the plane, and second of all, the PPL is not quite focusing on that. And this is as well reflecting or bringing the pilot into a little bit of self-reflection, because when the people doing a landing and they think, oh, I just did a great landing, nothing has happened, and the plane can still be used. Maybe if we teach them a little bit different in grading themselves, maybe that would be already the first approach to call the instructor much earlier.
Andreas, you got some?
I think I think it's a very complex issue that we have here, because at the end, I think most of the really hard accidents that we're dealing with I have the root cause in the human factors. I think it must be balanced, because a lot of training in the skills that we have can compensate things in the human factors. But let me bring it a little bit to example. Yeah, you have here the stalls, for example. Yeah, I never remembered a stall accident that happened for me in the training. Yeah, it always worked perfect. Yeah, but if you look at the statistics, yeah, I always ask the question, why does it happen? Yeah, I always did so many stalls in my life, and it never happened to me. Yeah, that an airplane gone away and I lost control. But it happens. If you look at the statistics, it's one of the big issues that we have. And for me personally, for my assumption, yeah, it's the human factor issue. Because why? Yeah, if you do a normal stall and your brain works, yeah, everything is fine, you're able to handle that. But if you have a stall in a situation where your brain doesn't function normally, and that could be an engine failure, that could be bad weather, that could be a busy stress situation in landing, yeah, then our brain doesn't work in a normal way. We are in this tunnel view issue where our senses are very, very limited. Yeah, and you all know we have airplanes, modern airplanes with stall warning systems. Yeah, but look at that. In that situations, we don't hear that stall warnings. Our senses are very, very limited, and I think these are the, let's say, elements where we should work on as a flight instructor. And I have no really way out of it, but it's one of the root causes why we should work on, yeah, that it can happen and these situations to deal with. Yeah, and I did some last year in our Austrian season open. We worked on that issue, and we gave some small, let's say, tools to the pilots and to the flight instructors to work with that. And these helping words that we have, and we call it, for example, ASAP, yeah, ASAP, yeah, it means attitude. First is the attitude, then is the speed, yeah, that analyze and perform, something which is so deep in your brain that it works, yeah. And I think it's really, really, there's no tool for that, but we should work on that as a flight instructor, because it's so complex behind it. It's the human factor issue.
Yeah, but this is actually what you need to overcome. That's where we're looking at when you're doing, for example, UPRT training, the so-called startle effect, the point at which people are just saying that, and you have to train people that this is not happening. So there we have already the difference. So commercial pilots providing as a flight instructor training in the basic UPRT in the IFR or in the CPL phase, or then advanced UPRT later on towards the type rating, they training people towards especially this item to overcome this startle, this 5 seconds where they are just passenger in their own plane.
I think that's an interesting thing, the startle effect, indeed, that, you know, we at EASA, we have launched a study. I think it's been a year or 2 years ago, where they actually went and did an analysis on the startle effect. And I think that maybe that is something for us also to make it more aware of that it happens, and how do you react to that, or how do you deal with it? Because it's very human to be startled for an event that you don't expect. And I think this is why, in that sense, maybe agree with that, Prokopis, is where you have briefings, right? So where you can start to prepare yourself already for something that might happen. And if you are ready, you can limit the startle effect to even less maybe than 5 seconds, or, you are mentally ready to deal with the situation.
For me, here is the mastery of the flight instructor, because as I saw before, the maneuvers. The maneuvers can be, let's say, reach a high skill with practice and practice and practice and practice. But for the same maneuvers, different persons react differently. So this is the mastery of the flight instructor, to combine the skill with the human factor. It's in order to recognize how this person reacts on a stall, how this person reacts on a single landing failure, how this person, because if you take the book, there is only 1 or 2 ways to do a stall, 1 or 2 ways to do an emergency landing, but you see how differently people react, because everyone is getting the feedback from that situation, from that maneuver differently. So that's why we have the flying instructor. So I would like to add a little bit something that I like from Andreas, that we should allow people flying and flying and flying. That's why we're there. We're just protecting the student until he gets the skill to fly alone or get his license, to teach him fly and let him fly. But here we're having the cost factor, that in order to become a better pilot from the skill perspective, you need to fly a lot, and the cost is a huge obstacle.
Yeah.
Flight is quite expensive lately, among other, let's say, obstacles like the airport limitations and other things, and the airspace, but still the cost, it's a factor that we really should pay attention. That's why we have private pilots that are going to the airport every 2 years just to do a revalidation. They haven't flown for the last 2 years. So it's very difficult in that case for even an examiner, if they're doing a check ride, for those people, to reach the skill level that needs to pass a check ride.
And yeah,
we open a lot of things.
No, we opened a lot of things. But I think what you're saying, did you want to address that? Because what you're saying, and then maybe also what you guys have been saying, is that we need to be a bit creative in that sense, because the regulations is there, right? We need to do stalls. That's what the regulations is saying, what we need to do on our skill test. But how we do stalls, when do we do stalls? That is something of the flight instructor, and maybe we should be, I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. Do we need to be more creative? Do we need to be more, within the regulation, within the set standards? We need to find our freedom to say, like, hey, this is important. For instance, if I may quickly, engine failure during takeoff. We all train that. Engine failure during takeoff, right? We chop the power and the student needs to react. What about partial engine failure after takeoff? This, for me, this is the most, we don't train that. And this is the most, in that sense, difficult situation to handle. If you've never trained it, if your instructor never trained it, it's not in the regulation, but it's part of becoming a better pilot, a more resilient pilot. So what is your take, Toby?
Yeah, let's say, as a former airline pilot, I was in a simulator 3 times a year. So 2 times is minimum requirement, and we went 3 times because we were crossing the Atlantic, and basic flying skill were taught in addition. So I would agree, I would sign off that training makes or provides better pilots. So there are a lot of restrictions what needs to be trained and The training has changed as well in an AOC for a commercial airliner towards a competency-based training, which is providing a lot of data, which needs to be personalized anonymously, then change your training program. And these personalized training program, to keep it in mind, I have a few students over the years who are coming regular, approaching me and asking, can we do training? But it's not all of the students I have released into the flying world. So there are just a few of those. And of those people, I have in mind where are the weak spots, and I provide training, especially personal training for those people flying on a Cirrus or flying on a Piper 28. And yes, the problem is in a simulator, to close that sentence, you can't train a lot more. So
That's the sound.
We lost you, Toby.
okay.
Oh,
Probably it's the microphone.
that's
Can you hear us, Toby?
Yes, very well. I hear you fine.
okay.
Your microphone has gone really weak for some reason.
Yeah.
I haven't moved yet, so
So
okay.
that was an interesting take on going into the simulator and training and having to go through training and to be a better pilot. Andreas,
Yeah, I think may I jump in a little bit? I think you made the right words. We must be creative in a ATO, DTO, or even as a flight instructor. Yeah, and I give you another example, maybe from the stalling things. Yeah, if you train your student always in a very gentle airplane on a forward CG situation, yeah, that the stall behavior might be a very nice one and gentle and nothing happens, yeah. But the same airplane, yeah, on the aft CG, yeah, with maybe a four-seater with back in the aft CG, it might be completely different airplane. And if you look at some of the accidents we have, exactly that happens, yeah. A very, very experienced pilot flying always the same airplane, just another CG, and it's a complete different situation. So I think also to let's say expand our fleet of airplanes or training scenarios in that area may help to give the student a better understanding what is behind that. Yeah. So I really like your approach to say we must be creative and make more of these syllabus that we have. It's just the minimum, yeah, and we can expand that to make better pilots at the end.
all right. Well, thank you for your insights. I hope the issues with your microphone are solved.
Yes.
All right,
Very
we got you. We got you
Thank you.
loud and clear. It's interesting because I already feel a little bit of, Toby, you're coming from the commercial world. You're running an ATO. You're also doing a lot of, the higher licenses, to put it that way. Andreas and Prokopis, you are also training in a flight club. Is there, if I can put it like this, is there a difference? Do we feel that there is a difference between training in an ATO and training in a DTO, in a club? And are then the instructors, the competence of the instructors different?
I think there is a difference, of course, but not really, I think, for the instructor itself. Yeah. At the end, I think what are the edges? Yeah, we have maybe an ATO, yeah, running really commercially. So there's a commercial pressure to make a pilot in a short period of time, yeah, with a minimum amount of money behind it. So this is a completely different scenario that we have in some of the flight clubs, yeah, where the training time is not an issue, yeah. The focus is just to make good pilots for, at the end, the flight club. So that are completely different scenarios in training. Yeah, and also for as an authority, different scenarios we have to look at. Yeah, there's a commercial pressure on an organization, and maybe on a DTO in a flight club, there's no commercial pressure. Yeah, time is not an issue. It's just focused on a good pilot training attitude. Yeah, but I think for the flight instructor, it's not so big difference. Yeah, he's sitting with the student in the airplane, and this is, I think, the focus that we should have for the flight instructor. Yeah, this just student and pilot work we have to do. Yeah, and this mirroring that we have as a flight instructor, for me, is one of the most important things that we have to look at as a flight instructor. Each word that we say is like a mirror to the student. Yeah, if I say on landing, yeah, just pull, yeah, it's going into the brain of the student, yeah, and it might be the completely wrong words, yeah, and I don't like that, yeah, personally, because it's the wrong word, yeah. Be putting something in the brain of a pilot which in a complete different scenario may create wrong decisions from the pilot itself. So we must make the right words, yeah, the right handling, yeah. So, and this is our really demanding job that we have as a flight instructor, I think.
And that is not any different for you, Toby, as you don't feel differently about people coming from flight clubs or in that sense.
I think both parties, let's say it like this, DTOs, ATOs, and flight clubs. First, we have people approaching us who just would like to gain the private pilot license because they love flying. They would like to become part of aviation family, and others, they just are short visitors performing a PPL in a very short, in the shortest possible time. So that is actually the commercial background. Is we have people, yes, that's what I'm agreeing to, who would like to gain a PPL, IFR, CPL on top, and then later on to become quickly as possible a commercial pilot to join the market. But on the other hand as well, we have people who just would like to say, okay, I would like to have the possibility in the environment which I know to gain a higher license later on, which, because the PPL is not the end for me. With a basic IFR, it became quite easy to gain an IFR rating. So we have people on hand as well as saying us in the feedback later on that they have selected an ATO instead of a club because of the possibilities they have later on and because of the infrastructure. And today what is as well what we have experienced, because we have as well a group of people moving from the club or smaller schools which are not so standardized and to an ATO, because they are looking for the standardization, because they're saying I'm not the youngest anymore, but I would like to learn flying, but I need a structured approach to gain my license. And this is something from my personal experience, because I did my glider pilot license as I was 20 years old, and it was a nightmare at the end because it was totally not structured. And this is what we still have in smaller clubs and schools. It's not bad, because if you have time and no commercial pressure, but it's not, let's say, the best training. It is over a long period of time, yes, and you need to have the time. And I hope that in the future we change the flight instructor regulations a bit so that more people become again flight instructors, sharing this passion and sharing as well their experience. Because now the instructor rating, and I don't want to open the new topic now, but the instructor rating to gain is quite complicated.
Jacobus, is like
Yes,
we all share a passion.
Just a small comment. The training, for me, it's the same because actually the goal is the same, but the students are different. But they have a common point, and this is the responsibility of the instructor to pass the passion for flying. Even if you have private pilots, commercial pilots, airliners, military pilots, you should pass the passion of flight. Because I have done training in all the areas, from gliders up to the airlines, business jets or helicopters. I have noticed that the students that are going just to learn how to fly are acting and addressing the problem differently from those that are going to be commercial pilots, because they're more committed to study, they invest more time in their training. But for the instructor, I would agree with Andreas that the job is the same. You have to teach them how to fly, and even if you're teaching a pilot in an Airbus 320, you still have the same responsibility to make him to love flying the airplane, because you can see a lot of times, especially in the airline world, that people are doing the work like just a normal work because it's a nice job, has a lot of let's say good salaries, and people they don't like to fly, and it's more often lately because now the pilot job is very let's say
Very demanding.
yeah, very demanding, and you can see a lot of people like that, and it's of course you have to push yourself to wake up at 4 in the morning to do the first milk run. But from the other side, I couldn't sleep when I had this kind of flight because I was expecting to go to the airport and do the first flight at 5 in the morning, and this is something that came from my instructors, and I'm really proud because I had good instructors all the time, and I remember every single word. And I'm doing the same let's say reputation.
Christian, should be passion for flight. Should that be in the regulations?
Good question. In which context? You shall only obtain a license if you demonstrate that you're a passionate aviator. I think there's no. I don't know. Just kidding. No, but
putting you on the spot.
To check your pulse. If your pulse is over 120, you're allowed.
No, I think anybody who faces the challenges and it takes the time and the money in order to become a pilot or even later on an instructor needs to be a passionate
passionate
aviator. I think what our objective should be is that this passion aviation should be further promoted to push yourself to improve more and more and more, rather than being demotivated through obstacles that might be here and there, right? So this is for us the motivation to make the regulatory framework, but also the general framework, not only the rules, better and better and better.
All right. Okay. That's cool. You
So,
got some
well, we've got.
results?
Hopefully, we'll have some. I don't know if we're going to cut some of the discussion because we've got quite a lot of questions.
Okay.
There's one interesting comment from Frederick about the challenges of, and I've heard this. A few people raised this at Aero, was the challenges of the cost of some of the landing fees, and that particularly if you do approaches without touchdown, and then similarly noise restrictions and those kind of things. And I know it's something maybe not necessarily to dwell on it, but I know certainly in terms of the later work, next phases of work we're doing on the GA roadmap, particularly that's something we've heard quite a lot, and I know is being talked about how can we provide, basically make GA more as accessible as possible, particularly given many of the financial challenges. So I thought it useful to comment on that particularly. And do you want to just quickly look at the results of those last two polls, and then we see how we go on that one? Give me a second. So I'll just quickly go to here. So if we look at, in fact, I'll go just back one. If you had the choice now, would you go back and start, or would you rather do it in an ATO, DTO? Interesting. Yeah, ATO was the same as DTO in terms of ATO because they like the structured program and the availability of professional flight instructors. DTO because it was more flexible and tailored, broadly the same. Interesting, it's just changed there. Yeah, ATO, they aspired to gain higher licenses, so that's that one. And then really quickly on the next one, yeah, in terms of flight instructors, whether they're more competent, etc. people said a lot of it's, you know, it depends on the individual. I think,
Yeah,
I think that's
what we
came out
agree.
in the discussion,
Yeah.
didn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's on that one.
All right, so that's interesting. Good discussion. I think what for me is important to know. Well, not important to know, but you got any tips for becoming to be a great flight instructor? How do I become, as a new flight instructor? How do I become a great flight instructor? Toby.
Don't take it as a job. Don't take it. So for me, it's okay. I stopped flying commercially a few years ago due to COVID, and my airline was closed. And for me, I'm now doing in my daily business. I'm head of training here in the school. But for me, it's still I still love what I do, and this is not comparable to working, let's say, in a bakery or in somewhere else. I cannot compare it to a normal job. And still, as I know, 42 years old, and I'm for 15 years now flight instructor, I still love what I do, and I still love to experience and to guide people and to join their paths, their individual paths towards the pilot license, not only towards the PPL as well, towards the ATP. When we release them and they're coming back after a few years saying, I got this job and now I'm flying whatever, Premier or Phenom 300 business jets, that just makes you proud as well. So, and I totally agree that the individual is the key role in that, but this is what we cannot force due to the regulations. That's what motivation is, something which you have or have not. And yeah, I must say we have due to the airline crashes due to COVID and we have a lot of airliners who are just taking flight instructor as a job, which it isn't, because when we have this season opener here in the school, or we organize flight instructor courses, and then we go to small places, to grass trips, and we have an overnight over there, and then we have a breakfast together. This is something like creating an atmosphere which makes it all a little bit special, let's say, like this. And yeah, never stop learning. It's you have to do it on your own. You have to gain your knowledge maybe on your own and not sit and wait. And this is maybe a problem we have in the society, that people are just receivers today because everything is prepared. You can start YouTube, you can look at something, but you're not start being creative anymore because we have too much provided in the media maybe, and not thinking on your own. This is maybe something we have to encourage a bit more.
Prokopis, you got some tips for me?
I would agree with Tobias that don't take it as a job. The last years I'm just instructing in a tail dragger and a Piper Cub. So this is I have more passion to go fly and instruct my students more than my students, because it's something that you really need to want to do it, and spend the time in the airport, go in the grass field, brief your student, spend a day with him. It's something that you really need to love it. You cannot when you're doing training professionally in an ADO or in let's say in an airline. Okay, you have to do specific things under a very strict training syllabus. You cannot get out of the lines very easily or not allowed it, and you want to standardize the pilots the same way. So it's not fun for me. That's why also for me the airline, it's not fun. I did it for a lot of years. I did also the corporate flying, but it's not fun. The flight instructor, it's like a lifestyle. It's like it's a holy job, and you are very responsible for your students and for the future of aviation. I always speak very passionate about that and very, let's say, emotionally, but this is how I feel it, because it's if we want to have a better aviation in the future, we need to have better instructors. And I would like to promote, I have a small video on YouTube about the importance of the flight instructors. This is something that I really care the last, let's say, 10 years. Even when I was in the Hellenic CAA, I was putting a lot of effort on that to let's say, to promote the better flight instructors, the better training, if we want to have a safer and better aviation for the future. I'm also FAA instructor, and both helicopters and airplanes, and also the FAA it's putting a lot of effort on that for a lot of years. They have a very easy refresher seminar that you can easily refresh your license online, and they have a lot of good things. And I think right now EASA is on a right track, and we have understood the problem, and I think we are on the right direction, to solve it. We need better flight instructors.
All right. Andreas, you got some...
Yeah, I totally agree to that, what you all said. I think the only that I have to add is that new flight instructors should be not expect to be the heroes. Yeah, very often it's wrongly understood. Yeah, it's really a passion. It's a hard job to be a good flight instructor, and I think a flight instructor must not be the best pilot. Yeah, he must be the best instructor. Yeah, and that is so important. Yeah, so the instruction work it's training, it's instructions, that where we should be the best. Yeah, the to be a pilot, it's just one part of our jobs that we have. Yeah, and so I think this is a little bit the guide that I saw over the time. Yeah, that some of the flight instructors seem to be the best of the airport, yeah, but at the end they fail to be a good instructor. Yeah, so it's a different thing. It needs a lot of passion, and that's it, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Passion, still passion, right? Christian.
Write it down, Christian.
I'm not an instructor myself, but from my point of view, read the air regulation every night before you fall asleep. It helps. Fall asleep.
And we have to include the passion as well.
It's a check. We all do this every day.
All right.
We're talking a lot about passion, so we have to include it in the regulation.
All right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that I will put that on the shopping list for next room making test to put more passion into our regulation. It's a good
All
tip.
right. Okay. Well, thanks. I think this is all good stuff. I think I got a lot of good information from you guys. I hope you also got. We got maybe some time for some questions that popped up, which the panel can address. You got some hot burning questions, John, for us.
So 44% of people think flight instructors are almost very cool.
Oh,
33% said they were very cool. So that's
all right.
just gives you a flavour of that. I'm just going to quickly stop the poll a second. Oh gosh, I'm going to just go back to the questions now so we can see what the Q&A said. There we go. There we go. So if we go to the questions now, and we've got the ones that have been voted up. Oh, that should stop now. Hold on a second. Oh, sorry. That's better. Oh. Sorry, slight technical delay. Solves. Okay, so the top voted question here. Are there any plans to improve the ECQB or update the ECQB database? There are senseless questions or answers in it. I don't think there are. I know there are an awful lot of people that go into that. I know that one thing is to check. I know there are also a lot of fake websites, which often cause a lot of problems.
We'll call Francis next time.
Yeah. No, long story short, there is. I also don't think that this is true. The ECQB is permanently updated, and there is even a process to and the feedback system. If you as an applicant undergoing a theoretical knowledge examination with a competent authority, you have problems with any questions, you should inform your competent authority. There is a feedback process. where the competent authorities can provide feedback to EASA that there is a question, there is a problem with that and this and that question for following this up individually. But I would not support the statement that there is the ECQP has a lot of bad questions. There might be some individual problems, but these should be followed up in the process that I just described.
Cool. I think maybe we go to the next question. We've got quite a few. Do you think it would be beneficial to include simulator training as a compulsory part of PPL training? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can. We have a simulator in our ATO. We have this one because we are using most of the time during IFR and CPL training. Wendell spent a lot of hours in that. So yes, we have it, and on the side we use it in the PPL. So the understanding of the radio navigation principles, reference VOR, GPS, intercepts, bearings, flying a constant track, avoiding a dog leg or something like that, is much better by using a simulator. So yes, it would make compulsory training. I wouldn't agree to that, because then you lose all the clubs who don't have the money to gain a simulator. But from the training perspective, I could say that the understanding for the radio navigation principles and as well the basic IFR training, which you can provide in a simulator, that the results are much better in the handling capabilities later on when they are flying in the hood. I would even increase the simulator time in the part FCL.
Anybody else want to
Of
add
course,
anything on the
yes.
simulator?
For the PPL training with simulator, we have the 5 hours that it's come from the ICAO regulation. Christian can say more about that. I have to add that okay, in general, we believe that the simulator flying is good, and we can do a lot of things that we can mitigate the risks from flight training. But at the end, we're flying a real airplane, so we have to be ready for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you have 45 hours now where you have a lot, even if you increase the simulator time a bit, which is the cheapest time you can get, you have much more possibilities to train. And in regards of the changes we are expecting with CSFSTDA issue 3, we can use simulators much more during training. And then we can say, okay, this simulator is capable of stall recovery, we can include this. And that this is not a compulsory thing, because not every club has the money to buy a simulator, but I guess simulation is getting cheaper and cheaper, and maybe there will be a few clubs joining that one. But from my perspective, we have now 3,500 hours on our FSTD. Most of the hours are IFR training, of course, I know, but the people and the feedback we get from that is much better, because you can pimp, or you can put the students in a totally different situation with a mouse click. And yeah, I guess as well, most of the users are airlines using simulators for their crew training, and there the results from the competency-based training in the airline business are as well maybe giving the idea or the intention to change something during that one.
So there's another interesting question. Here's an interesting question that I think people might be interested to debate. How can we as instructors adapt for the future coming market and things like eVTOL?
So for eVTOL, what you can do is, what you can do, we're at the moment running a rule-making task to put into the act regulation a transitional provision that will provide the very high-level framework for the initial phase of the start of VTOL operation. And what this transitional provision will allow basically is that if you already hold an instructor certificate, you can add to that for aeroplanes or helicopters. You can add to that aeroplane or helicopter instructor certificate additional instructor privileges for an eVTOL aircraft, of course, provided that you have the eVTOL aircraft type rating yourself, which is another part of this transitional provision. So long story short, once these new requirements come into place, as an commercial airplane or helicopter pilot, you will be able to obtain an additional type rating for an eVTOL aircraft, and based on that, you will also be able to extend the scope of your instructor certificate, flight instructor certificate, type rating instructor certificate, to also include instructional privileges for an eVTOL aircraft. But of course, you need to liaise with an operator who is operating and providing training for eVTOL aircraft.
Cool. I think that's where we maybe stop there.
Yeah. Okay.
What we'll do is maybe just say
Yeah.
we'll take as many questions as we can, feed it back into future safety promotion, and come back with as many answers as we
We
can.
will definitely, all your answers and all your contribution to this webinar, very much appreciated, and we will absolutely come back to you in one way or another. I think with that, I mean, this has been a long talk already. I think we have to really, we can talk for the whole evening, but still we need to go to bed, right? And so let's come to an end to this GA Safety Season Opener on flight instructors. I want to thank you, the audience, again for staying with us so long, being active part of the discussion, doing the polls, giving us some questions, and I think I hope that you found this very informative and thought-provoking as well. And at least this talk made me feel more that we are together. It's not the pilots versus flight instructors or the regulations, it's the whole system that needs to come together, because only together I think we can all make a positive contribution and a positive dent into the the accident rate in that sense. I want to thank my special guests, Prokopis, Christian, Andreas, and Toby. Thank you for being with me today. Your insights, your ideas, your experience, I really appreciate it. Thank you, John, for the control and the knobs, all those kind of things. So, my friends out there, thank you. Have a great 2023 season. Fly safe, have fun. And remember to always come back to fly another day. And I'm Wendell Lynch for the Aviators Club.
You can talk to yourself for a while. I'm going for a little stroll.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.